Steve Fischer, the PI who's been looking into the Celeste Rivas Hernandez David case, this investigation, just posted two major updates about this. One, apparently new photos that may show Celeste with David at a key moment. And two, new legal paperwork that may prove there is in fact a criminal case against the singer and that his father may be being compelled to testify. So much to get into. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. All right, before we go any further, I gotta tell you about today's sponsor, Proof Wallets. I started hearing about Proof Wallets everywhere. People are like, this is the best wallet I've ever had. I'm here to tell you, the hype is real. Why? First of all, Proof Wallets, it's a veteran-owned company, and it's built by craftsmen who take pride in what they make. It shows. Look how well this is designed. But first of all, they're super secure. Not only are they RFID blocking, but they also hold up to 25 cards without feeling bulky or feeling like anything's gonna slip out and get lost. And the craftsmanship, that's obvious. But what really separates Proof is how they treat their customers. Because did your wallet get damaged? Did it get stolen? They will replace it for free. And you can even customize it with images and text and logos, anything you want. So go to go.carryproof.com/sidebar and order yours today. Use code SIDEBAR for 15% off your entire order today. That is code SIDEBAR for 15% off. All right, so this is a little bit of breaking news. This is not as polished as we do other sidebars, which I kind of like at times. This is weird, okay? This is a big development now in the David case that we have been following. Remember, this is the case where 14-year-old Celeste Rivas Hernandez was allegedly found in the trunk of a Tesla out in LA in September 8th. We believe that that Tesla was registered to singer David. Okay, there have been no arrests. There have been no charges. There have been reports that a grand jury is hearing evidence in this case. And then all of a sudden, we get these new messages, these new posts by Steve Fischer. Steve Fischer, somebody we've had on the show before. Steve is the private investigator who was hired by the owner of the property where David had apparently been staying. And this property is near where the Tesla was found, reportedly. And Steve has been all involved in this. He's been on the ground there. So he posted two things I have to talk about. One is he posted something regarding these new photos. I don't think we've ever seen them before. Allegedly of Celeste, allegedly of David, key. And then he posted these legal filings that would suggest, A, there is in fact a criminal case against David Anthony Burke, real name for David, and B, is his father being compelled to testify against him. Wow. Okay. Let's take it step by step. I'm not doing it alone. I want to bring in legendary former homicide detective, Fil Waters. Phil, thank you so much for taking the time to talk about this. As we're breaking it down kind of in real time, I have to first start with this post by Steve. I'm going to read it verbatim. We'll talk about it. On December 31st, 2024, at around 10 p.m., several people were at David's house. Although Celeste Rivas Hernandez is not clearly visible in any of the photos from that evening, we believe she was present. The iPhone she had previously been pictured with appears to match the phone and case seen on the table, along with a Hello Kitty mug. Another photo, which appears to have been taken by David, shows what are likely Celeste's fingers on a bottle. The phone that is likely Celeste appears to be on the Wi-Fi settings screen and connected to the Wi-Fi network. Even though iPhones use a private Wi-Fi address feature, the address remains fixed for a specific network, meaning it stays the same each time that device reconnects to that router. Hopefully, law enforcement investigators have reviewed the router logs to determine exactly when Celeste's phone and everyone else's phones were connected to the home's Wi-Fi network and compared that information against the statements each person provided about when they were at the house and who else was there, including Celeste. For example, if individuals in the photos, including these photos and many others, claim they did not see Celeste or were not at the house, yet the router logs show their phone was connected to the Wi-Fi, that would raise serious questions. We cannot forget about Celeste or the justice she deserves. It has now been more than 5 months and no charges have been filed. The last photo of Celeste is not from that night. It's from another time and meant to show her phone to compare with the phone on the table. Hashtag Celeste Rivas Hernandez, hashtag David. When you look at these photos, there's one, it appears to be David, and then I think this looks like Neil Langston. I could be wrong. Neil Langston is somebody who is, we reported, was arrested out in Montana, was arrested out on a warrant for failing to appear as a witness, apparently was brought back to Los Angeles, and there was photographs of TMZ, videos of him entering a Los Angeles courtroom, so we believe it is likely he testified in the grand jury, although he apparently didn't testify for a long time. There is another photo, it says David taking photo, where it could, again, it's hard to tell if that person is Celeste. It might be someone else. It might be this person, Asia, who he's talked about. There's another photo of a phone, and then there's another photo of potentially Celeste. And then there's another photo, I think, just of Celeste herself. Okay, let's break this down. First of all, Phil, this is significant, I would say, because I believe Steve had said the last known photo they have of Celeste is January 2025. But what are you taking away from what he's suggesting, and what are you taking away from these photos?
Well, thanks for having me, Jesse. It's an interesting case, and presumably they're coming from some sort of social media, and they may have been posted by her,
or someone's phone. He might have had access
by David,
to
or somebody else, right?
Right.
They're out there, and I'm sure what law enforcement is doing is they're using these photos to develop a timeline. That's important. And whether or not she's in these pictures or not. Now, are the ages, we know Celeste is a juvenile. So are the ages of these other people seen in these videos, are they adults? Are they 18 years or older? So my point here is that if she was there, if Celeste was there in this gathering, it may have been purposeful to not have her in photographs because of her age. So when people are involved in this kind of a thing, David, these folks having all these people around, having these young girls in there, he may be smart enough. He's not smart enough to engage with these people, but he may be smart enough to make sure that their images are not seen in the course of these pictures. So I don't think it was any big secret that she was a fan and had been, associated with him on several occasions. But in this particular moment in time, pictures, 1,000 words, and videos are 1,000,000. Then you've got the clue of her phone being connected. So she's there, or at least the phone is there. And that's what we need to remember here, that phones are detected as to where they are. That does not necessarily mean that the person that owns that phone is with the phone.
Although it would be weird for them not to be with their phone at that time. I guess the question is, I mean, you tell me a scenario where it would make sense to have a phone and not the person there, unless they, I don't know.
Well, that's just a fact. So, yeah, it would be weird, but it's not that it couldn't happen.
Let me ask you this. The part where he talks about the routers, right? So it is an interesting time if you're thinking about people testifying in front of a grand jury or speaking to investigators and saying what they knew about Celeste or when they were around Celeste. And if you think about Neil Langston providing testimony, and I don't know if he just pled the fifth when he was up in front of the grand jury, assuming he was. But talk to me about, is it possible to track the router information to see which phone was connecting at what point, and would suggest those people were there at that time? Is that something you've done in the past, that routers can provide information and it's easily discoverable, easily found, that information?
Oh, sure. Anything that digitally connected like that can be forensically analyzed. And in fact, we had a lab that did just those very things. So, and then you get, of course, you're getting with the provider, whoever's providing the interweb connection and that kind of thing. So yes, of course. And it will give, and again, we always go back to timelines. So it's going to give you a timeline of that period, that whatever it's a week or a month or whatever, they're going to go back. If it were me, I would go back in time, perhaps a month, and see when we see her phone showing up in that router, in that network. And then you go and you move forward and you see when was that phone in and out of the network, disconnected from it, connected to it. And then you want to see the concluding part of it is, what was the last time that the phone was connected to the network? And given the time and day that she was found, then that starts to close the gap on perhaps when whatever happened to her happened.
That's interesting. And yeah, I do wonder, like, if you were an investigator, right, like, and you're questioning somebody, would you be in a position to say that, I mean, tell us everything you know about Celeste, and they say, I didn't know her, I wasn't really around her. Do you then present these photographs and say, well, what about this? You know, I mean, is that a tactic that we could expect in a case like this?
Well, sure, you would if it were me interviewing him, it would be, we want to go back into his background first just to establish that relationship. But when we get to the core of the matter, we want to see from him what he's talking about in terms of when did this relationship start, and you've got to kind of phrase it in a way that he doesn't get defensive. This is just, look, she's a fan, a big fan. She seemed to show up at different concerts and so forth and so on. And how did you get into a more friendly relationship where she became kind of a super fan and she started getting invited to some of these other functions? And see if he'll tell you that, and you just kind of want to walk your way up to the point where if he's denying things that you do have digital evidence showing, then of course you would show that to him and say, look, well, if you're saying this, then how does this occur? And can you explain why she's in this picture with you at this time at your house? Whatever those pictures might reveal. So sure, it would be a series of questions to get him to relax and of course be able to share those things. And and he may, in a way, I've had this happen where you're talking about the incident itself, and the suspect is actually describing what happened, and they're walking you right up to it, but they're not going to make an admission as to, yeah, this is when I ended their life. But they may be giving you everything that happened up to that point,
right?
And and trying to play it off as something that, yeah, we were doing this and that, blah blah blah. So I've had that happen with suspects, and but when they're telling you everything but that moment, that's pretty powerful stuff.
And a couple of things here. Look, we're getting this from Steve. We're getting it from his account. I have no reason to not believe that these photos are illegitimate, if they're not real. They don't depict what they seem to show. But just to, again, I'm just giving a caveat about where it's coming from. We haven't been able to, it's not like the police release these. But look, they appear to show drinking happening, a party of some sort. I can see when you look at the photos that he might believe these are Celeste's hands around a liquor bottle of some kind. I want to couple this now with what else Steve Fischer posted. And I think that this one is arguably the more important one. So one of the things we couldn't officially confirm, law enforcement wouldn't officially confirm this, obviously, is whether, in fact, there is a criminal case being mounted against David. There's been reporting that he's a suspect. There's been reporting that a grand jury is hearing evidence. Law enforcement's not going to confirm that. They're not going to do that. It's obvious. They don't want to compromise an investigation. Steve posted this. David Burke, again, so this is David. David Burke's father filed a petition for a writ of habeas corpus, claiming that a summons ordering him to testify in California violates his due process rights. He lives in Texas. The footnote in the ruling states, the underlying case is the people of the state of California v. David Burke. The Court of Appeals denied the petition. Both the petition and the underlying case documents, likely related to a failure to appear similar to Neo's situation, are currently sealed, as a motion for rehearing has been placed on the docket for February 24th. That footnote, the people of the state of California v. David Burke, is especially significant to me and could signal we are getting close to the beginning of justice for Celeste. Now, before I read you what this petition states, and there was only one page of this that was posted by Steve, and again, he must have gone through the court records to get this. When you hear terms relator, so a relator, my understanding is, under the law here, would be a person who is seeking some sort of relief from a court, and it's through a habeas petition. Now, usually when we talk about habeas, this is somebody who's been convicted and they've exhausted other appeals. So they're saying, my detention is unlawful for some other reason. They might be saying, new evidence has come forward. This is a little different. This is where a relator, so this is going to be potentially David's father, is seeking a writ saying, look, I don't have to comply with a certain court order because I'm being deprived of liberty. My due process rights are being violated. And this is a way to prevent being held in contempt of court. So my understanding is, I looked this up under Texas law, that the relator, so here the defendants, here David's father, has the burden to show that a contempt order is invalid and that his rights would be violated, that he'd be deprived of liberty without due process of law. Okay, now again, this was denied, but let me go to what it says here. Again, this is the screenshot from Steve. In the court for the First District of Texas, In re Dawood Burke, relator, so we believe that, according to Steve, this is his father. Relator Dawood Burke has filed a petition for writ of habeas corpus, contending that the trial court's order summoning him to testify in California violates due process. And yes, there is a footnote that says the underlying case is the People of the State of California v. David Burke. And then it gives the case number. It's pending in the 506th District Court of Waller County, Texas, the Honorable Gary W. Cheney presiding. We deny the petition for writ of habeas corpus. We dismiss any pending motions as moot. Okay. Now, Phil, I'm not going to get into the legal back and forth about why the court denied this, but A, have you seen anything like this before? And B, what does this signify to you? I mean, is this a confirmation that there is a criminal case against David?
Well, I don't know that we're using the word case here. There is, without a doubt, a criminal investigation taking place. And I know in Texas, I have taken those grand jury subpoenas and served them. And the person was reluctant to come in on their own power and just responding to the summons itself, the subpoena itself. And I have placed them in custody and then brought them to, in essence, to the grand jury, put them in jail, and then they appeared before the grand jury. So and then I have reworked capital murder cases where a writ of habeas corpus was filed by the convicted party, which is, habeas corpus, see the body. And that was a person who was convicted, just as you stated. Now, this is a very odd way of trying to fight the grand jury subpoena and claiming that there's no due process. Well, if he's not part of the investigation, I don't understand his due process reasoning here. I don't know who's advising him about that. I would think there would be another way to file restraining order of some kind.
Well, I imagine he feels like, I'm not going to show up, and he feels he's going to be held in contempt of court, and he's like, this is violating my rights. I just don't know what that argument would be. I mean, if you're compelled to testify, he can plead the fifth.
Well, of course he can, but you don't know. I mean, this is I've never seen something like this happen. And now I've been signed off by a judge in Waller County. That's right next door to where I am, and I used to work up there for a short time. So this is bizarre to me. Obviously he's getting some legal guidance somewhere, but the bottom line here is he's going to be compelled to go to the grand jury and testify. And just as you stated, he can walk in there and just claim the fifth, and and be done with it. But I don't think it serves whatever the investigation is involving his son. I don't think it serves him well for the father to do this. It just kind of adds another cloud over the investigation, at least of what we know about it at this point. So yeah. I find it very odd that he's just being very resistant to appearing before the grand jury.
Well, let's break this down for a second. So first of all, from a point of law, the grand jury, just like a jury in a trial, is not allowed to use someone invoking the fifth against the criminal defendant. That wouldn't be right. But it does add a layer to this, and it does make me wonder, why do they want him? Assuming this is true, that they want him to testify in front of a grand jury, why have the father testify? Do you think it's about, what did you know about your son's relationship or alleged relationship with Celeste? His whereabouts, what he's been up to, what was his reaction when the news came out that Celeste's body was found in your son's car? I mean, to have the father be compelled to testify is unique. To have the family member, unless they were somehow involved, I find that interesting, right?
Well, we don't know, but we don't know. And
Right.
obviously the grand jury is conducting their own investigation here. And what does this tell us? There's something in what they're looking at that has compelled them to issue a subpoena to the father. They want to talk to him. Now, what does that mean? It could be a variety of things. Has his father been in the presence of Celeste? Has he been around him in an affair around him and her in some sort of nefarious way that would implicate other things about his son? Or what was, and if he had and I'm going to use the term relationship, had some sort of relationship with Celeste, and I'm talking, maybe it could be something, I just met her, could be a short-term thing, or it could have been something that he may have involved himself in a more wrongful, questionable way. So there's something here that's brought the grand jury to wanting to talk to him. And he obviously is very reluctant to do that and does not want to participate in the grand jury testimony.
And doesn't that signal something? So Steve Fischer, I've had him on here. I've also had him on my News Nation show, Jesse Weber Live. And he basically said, when it came to respect to Neil Langston, this guy that was arrested and brought back to LA, maybe invoked the Fifth, seemed to not want to testify. If you got prosecutors who are now resorting to having him testify, when Steve made the point, there might be evidence that Neil Langston is allegedly involved in this. If you're not even calling him as a target of investigation, but now you're having him as a witness, and now you're bringing in the father, who clearly doesn't want to testify too, I mean, at least based on the paperwork. What does it say about the strength of the case? If you're calling these people when you know that they might not willingly provide information, does that suggest that there's a weakness in their case against allegedly David or anyone else? Why call them if you know you're not going to get information from them?
Well, I don't think it suggests any weakness or strength in the case. I think we're in the middle of the process. And so, as I've said, something happened in that grand jury investigation that said, you know what, we need to talk to Dad. And now Dad being, and perhaps, look, you know as well as I do that in the course of an investigation that there's a strategy involved in the investigation, and then there are tactical decisions that are made within the strategy to see if we can get a reaction of some kind. That may be what this is. And so if this does come down to a trial and the father is nothing more than a witness, then I would think, and we're just thinking, speculating here, that the prosecutors would bring the father in to testify. Then he's going to do what? He's going to get on that stand and he's going to claim the Fifth.
Yeah.
And I understand that. I've worked within the system for 33 years. I understand that is a right and it's not supposed to be held against them. But in real life, a jury sitting there listening to the father invoke the Fifth, that does not go well for the defendant. So that's just the reality of the way juries look at things. So it's an interesting turn in this overall investigation, but I don't think it shows any strength or weakness. I think that it shows that they are doing their due diligence and they're tracking down every lead that they've got in the course of the grand jury investigation.
Look, again, we are breaking this down in real time. I mean, we just got this like 5 minutes ago, so we're trying to make sense of it, but we wanted to get it out as soon as possible. If we get more information, we'll make sure to do another sidebar on it. But Fil Waters, thank you so much for taking the time to jump in on this. It's another piece of this puzzle, but hopefully we can figure it all out soon. Thank you so much, sir.
You bet. Thank you, Jesse.
And that's all we have for you right now here on Sidebar, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. Please subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you should get your podcasts. We're also up on NBC's Peacock. If you want to follow me, X, Instagram, my News Nation show, Jesse Weber Live, Monday through Friday, 11 p.m. Eastern. I'll see you next time, everybody.